So let's talk a little bit about language and religion and how they're tied together in Europe. So if you look at a map of language and the language groups, the major language groups, and you look at a map of the major religion groups, you can generalize a little bit. So in general, we find in the Northwest, which language groups? Major language group.
Germanic.
Yeah, the Germanic languages. And in general, there's exceptions, but what group would we find associated with the Germanic languages that we see in the Northwest? Protestant religions are prevalent there. How about the Southwest? Romance languages, along with Roman Catholicism. Yeah, good. And then, generally speaking, with exceptions, over in Eastern Europe, you would find which language? Prevalently Slavic, which is Russian root language, and along with that, the associated religion of Eastern Orthodox. Yeah, as we said, there was the Roman Catholic Pope in Rome, and then there was a splitting and a Pope in Constantinople, which became the seat of the Eastern Orthodox, which is very similar to Roman Catholicism in many, many different ways, different language, different writing, but much of the same rituals of Catholicism and saints, and very much the same structure, very similar religion. So we have those general groups of language and of religion. And that is a generalization because, again, as I was saying, many, many different languages, many, many different cultures, a mix of religion in different places. So those are big generalizations, but it just helps us with a little tool to be able to understand the locations a little bit better. Okay, so World War II was a European war where the rest of the world got brought into it. So during World War II, Europe was shattered. It was split. And what's really difficult sometimes for students to understand is that Russia was an ally, that the USSR, communist Russia, which is an expanded Russia, the USSR, was an ally to the European forces, to Western Europe, and to the US, and that it was really after World War II when Russia came in, or the USSR came in, and took over many countries. So these countries became Eastern Orthodox in religion. They became Slavic in language. Many, many Russian people moved in, and the Cold War began. And the Cold War with the United States, of course, the United States is not very interested or happy with communism, and Western Europe, the same. And so there was this big division, and that was what the Cold War was about. It wasn't fighting with troops on the ground or missiles. It was a war of technology and spying and secrecy and division of ideals. So it was an idealism that was divided, really. And this really split Europe. And the economic repercussions were horrible. And another thing that's hard to understand is when the Soviet Union fell in 1991, this was very difficult for places that had been dependent upon the USSR. because that kind of an economy is a command economy. It's a connected economy. And when the support was taken away for these countries of Eastern Europe, it was disastrous. Not only that, all the private ownership had gone over to, in communism, it's all owned by the state. And so it's pandemonium, because basically there isn't any ownership. People don't know who owns what. And there's a scramble for resources, which can result in a power vacuum where people come in and tend to take advantage. So then you get a lot of corruption many times. So places that have been colonized and places that were taken over as a result of the Cold War and the falling of communist USSR,